I want to bring in my guest. Hopefully that didn't go too long. I do want to say Oliver Hardway. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. But let me bring in my guest, Mark Sleboda. My mic was down for a little bit. I don't know how long it was down. Hopefully it was only a few seconds before I noticed it. But Mark Sleboda, International Relations Security Analyst, good friend of this channel. Mark, how you doing today, man? You doing all right?
Tomorrow, I'm alive. Thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show.
It is always an honor and a pleasure to have you. One of my audience members complained that I didn't do chats until the end. So between my guests, I tried to make a special attention to do so. But Mark, interesting news coming out of the West. Apparently, we are aghast by the number of people that were killed in this hellfire that was rained down on Kiev recently. Now we ignore the fact that Israel is bombing schools, burning kids alive. I can show the video. I think I showed it earlier today. But Trump is outraged by Russia. He says Putin is going crazy, and he doesn't quite get why. I want to show you something, though, for this that I think it's super interesting. So when Trump was asked about this, all right, so this part, this is the follow-up to what the reporter asked him when he says, I think Putin has gone crazy. Listen to what he says, because I think this gives a little context to what's going on with Trump. Right here.
Can I follow up on that? A Russian commander reportedly said that Putin was almost caught in the middle of a drone attack from Ukraine. So do you have any...
I haven't heard that, but maybe that would be a reason. I don't know, but I have not heard that.
So Putin is nearly caught up in a drone attack. Well, Trump has heard about, apparently, the hellfire that was rained down on Kiev and some other cities in Ukraine. I mean, it's war after all, right? He did not hear about that part. And so, there's always this question of, okay, what is in Trump's mind? And I think what matters in his mind seems to be less than who's talking to him and giving him and providing him information. Give me your take on that, by the way. What is your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I think it's really rich for anyone to seriously entertain Trump calling anyone else in the world crazy. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, second of all, my first thought with regards to that is, what the hell is Tulsi Gabbard doing? Tulsi Gabbard is supposed to be the director of national intelligence. Or is Trump just not reading or listening to even his intelligence briefing, or are they not giving him that information? And if not Tulsi, then why the hell not, right? His claim of ignorance there, I haven't heard much from Tulsi in a while, right? I don't necessarily expect to as DNI. I mean, that's a quiet behind the scenes role. But when the president doesn't know the most basic facts, i.e. that the Kiev regime launched more than 1,000 drones over several days with an extremely significant number for such attacks directed at Moscow, that also, by the way, killed civilians. Not right. Now, first of all, I have to say that neither side is systemically targeting civilians. Let's make that clear. I mean, all one has to do, not on a mass scale. Let me preface that. The Kiev regime has targeted civilians, but not on a truly mass scale, right? One only has to look at what the U.S.-funded, Israeli government is doing in Gaza to what real civilian casualties, where the government not only does not care at all about proportionality, but is outright targeting civilians looks like, right? That is Gaza. Second of all, if Russia launches several hundred drones and up to 100 missiles, and there's a purported, right, 13 civilian casualties. And I've heard different numbers. The first I heard there was a number injured and then killed. So does that include, I don't know, civilian workers at the Antonov drone factory, which is what Russia hit more than 20 times, according to videos we have actually seen? First of all, whatever the Kiev regime claims, about interceptions, their air defense interceptions of Russian drones and missiles. I mean, it has always been nonsense, and it is still nonsense, right? And we know that because videos from on the ground in Ukraine released online show 20 strikes in a row hitting this Antonov. It was previously an airplane factory. Now it is being used, was being used, I should say, to produce drones. And there were 20 strikes in a row recorded hitting that factory. That's the big flaming red fires. What you're showing right now is another interesting, because another of the big targets in the Kiev was in Kiev itself was the Kiev regime's remaining U.S. Patriot system launchers. And what we see there is the Patriot first trying to intercept, and then we see what is probably a combination first of trying to defend itself, and then there's another video that shows an automated release of all of its remaining ammunition, which is what it's supposed to do right before it gets hit, so that ammunition isn't hit on the ground, right, creating a much larger explosion. So definitely, we don't know the precise numbers. I mean, the Kiev regime is never going to tell us exactly how many Patriot launchers, associated radar systems, and control systems are hit in any given strike. But I think we can be pretty sure that at the very minimum, where they're one launcher less, right? Probably significantly more. So Russia was specifically targeting military-industrial facilities and air defense facilities. And the military-industrial facilities, drone factories, was their direct response, right? Or was presented as a direct response by the Kremlin for over 1,000 drone strikes on Russia over 3 days, including a significant number targeting Moscow. And it has to be said that there's a world of difference in the effectiveness between the Kiev regime's long-range strikes and Russia's long-range strikes, right? Kiev is certainly showing quantity, not quality, quantity. They're releasing large numbers of drones, and we have to presume that this is done with Western assistance, right? They're not launching hundreds of long-range strike drones and targeting, Moscow and other places deep into Russia without active Western intelligence targeting satellite and assistance. So, first of all, I don't know, again, who's informing Trump, but that was almost certainly collated. That attack was almost certainly operated and probably planned with, U.S. intelligence help. So that
he seems to be either
the effectiveness is much less, right? It's much harder to hide significant effects of Ukrainian strikes on Russia than the other way around, because Russia doesn't have, contrary to Western perception, Russia doesn't have a dictatorial regime that imprisons people for posting images on social media of these strikes and the media reporting on them and the like, right? Where you face either prison or being immediately sent to the front yourself when they come to your door over that matter. So, in Ukraine, it is much less likely to get that video evidence. Certainly the Western mainstream media never reports on it. I mean, they're just never ever going to acknowledge, except when it creates this emotional furor, this hellfire. So if Russia launches hundreds of drones and nearly 100 cruise missiles, right? The day before was Iskander missiles, and we're talking, let's say that a maximum of 13 civilian casualties was hit, right? In military terms, that is perfectly acceptable collateral damage for hundreds of strikes, right? That is, right? I mean, collateral damage is never a good thing, right? The goal is never to kill civilians, but you're not targeting civilians. And it is very likely that at least some of those civilian casualties were a result of the Kiev regime's air defense falling on their own city. I mean, because that is a very real thing. We've seen that many times in this conflict. And they're never going to, of course, differentiate which is between, we accidentally killed our own, our supposed own people, with our air defense missiles going awry or falling or intercepting and resulting in debris falling down and the like. Russia tends to when Russia lies, when the Russian government lies, and it does, right? It's a war, right? Propaganda is a thing. It tends to do so by omission, right? It just doesn't tell you. It usually doesn't present direct falsehoods to a much more insignificant, degree than the Kiev regime. So when there are effects on Russia, right? Or when, let's say, Russian air defense results in, civilian casualties on its own side, which has happened. It is, electronic warfare diverts drones and they hit a civilian building that may not have been intended to. Almost always, it later comes, the Russian government may not address it directly, but it then comes out in Russian media and Telegram channels quietly. Not blaring across the headlines. And when that happens, I always say so, right? Because I'm maybe not objective in my position on this conflict, but I try to stay objective in my analysis, which is
reality is reality.
Another thing entirely. There's an exchange of long range strikes. Now, would Russia have done long range strikes anyway, targeting Kiev regime's air defense and drone if it hadn't been preceded by this? Yes, sure, probably, right? But it makes it very convenient, right? They can, of course, and it is legitimate to claim that it was a response that immediately followed the Kiev regime's, repeated drone strikes. And they launched hundreds of drone strikes as foreign leaders were arriving for the May 9th victory parade, right? They did this again. So this Putin's helicopter, Putin was visiting the Kursk region for the first time after the Kiev regime forces had been completely driven out. And there was a drone swarm that attacked, right? And it is likely that they had intelligence, and it is that it was not a coincidence, and it is likely that some of that was Western intelligence that Putin was coming.
Basically, they tried to assassinate Vladimir
Putin.
It
is not 100%, right? I can't say that as a matter of fact, but there is a distinct likelihood that at least the Kiev regime and possibly Western governments just attempted to assassinate the Russian president. It is a distinct possibility. And so when Trump goes all off, Russia is crazy, and in response, he hits, the air defense you provided and a military industrial factory that was producing the drones that were likely used in the attacks on Russia, including on Moscow and including on the president. That is such a proportionate, reasonable response, right? However, 13 civilian casualties and 100 strikes, even if we accept that at face value, that is a perfectly 100% legitimate military strike. No questions, no and/ors, buts. Anything else is just emotive hand-wringing that our proxy poked the bear again and got ringed in response.
I mean, Mark, I feel like even having to answer this seems outlandish, considering Donald Trump has been giving 80% to Israel, who just murdered like 100 people over the 24 hours.
He himself launched 1,000 airstrikes on Yemen. How many civilians were killed in Yemen? No one ever
put it on Twitter. By the way, chest thumped on Twitter about civilians being murdered in Yemen, saying, "Oh, look at these people that we just killed. All of them were just civilians." Yeah, so, it's a bit rich for
They
Trump
took out an entire building full of civilians to get one guy.
One guy.
One guy.
One guy.
Now, go ahead and try the moralizing because, talk to the hand. Right?
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Well, I'm like, okay, this is a bit outrageous. This is what they, yeah,
it's
they're locking in on.
sickening. It's just noise. We know the U.S. does it, has done it for decades. Whatever.
Going after Putin is explosive.
Oh,
meaning if the Russian government believes that, that's explosive.
Well, it has to be said that the Kiev regime's military intelligence chief, right, Kyrylo, I like the dark Budana, he outright said that they have attempted to kill Putin, to assassinate Putin several times already over the last 3 years, and that has failed.
Do they know what would happen to Ukraine if they did that?
Yeah, there would be no more Ukraine. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, there would not be any question, right? I mean, again, they never the Western media and its Manichaean, ridiculous 6th grade level reporting on Russia and Putin and the like. Oh, Putin is the evil dictator villain. Oh, if we were only rid of Putin, then everything would be okay. Oh my God, Putin is a rational, pragmatic, cautious, realist when it comes to these things.
Right.
Whoever replaces him would be Medvedev, right? I mean, I don't know if you've seen the tweets. Medvedev just posted on his Twitter account a map of Ukraine at the end of the special military operation, where he presented as what is not part of a buffer zone. And it's a tiny little strip of Western Ukraine. It's not even all of Galicia. It's a tiny little strip of Galicia left at the end. You really want that? I mean, really? Okay. All right. I mean, or someone of the like. Reportedly, according to Bloomberg, the Trump administration, who are posing as moderators, disinterested moderators in negotiations that are pushing between their proxy Kiev Putsch regime and Russia. They're complaining about the head of the Russian diplomatic team in the negotiations, Medinsky, who, by the way, was the head of the Russian diplomatic mission back in the original 2022 Istanbul. First in Minsk in Belarus, actually, and then in Istanbul talks that led to the FAW Istanbul communique that was always just another pull the blanket over Russia's eyes deal. But they said he's too hardline, right? And
he just represents the government.
So Trump, representing the U.S. proxy regime in Kiev, is attempting to dictate who the diplomats on the other side of the table are. The Russian response, at least on social media, was overwhelming. You don't want Medinsky? Send Medvedev.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, that brings up another question, the communique. So apparently Russia was going to send out what they required for peace terms. I don't even know why this is necessary because they've been saying it for 3 years.
Just say terms, right?
Terms of surrender. Yeah.
They're not yet unconditional terms, but next time they will be.
Well, according to Medvedev, next time it's a surrender, basically. It will be unconditional surrender or you make terms. Yeah. Those terms are not going to change, right? Like, that's why I didn't even see the point in this communique.
This is
ultimately
going through the motions. It's going through them. Everyone is going through the motions right now. Everyone knows. Maybe Trump doesn't know. I mean, because he seems really ill-informed or not understanding about anything. But everyone else in his administration knows. Even J.D. Vance said, well, it's unlikely to result in anything, right? The Europeans certainly know. Their threats to continually put NATO troops, European troops on the ground as soon as there is a ceasefire, guarantee that Russia will never accept it. I mean, that is if there was any question of it. The Kiev regime knows it. They're planning for several years of war. right? They're talking, for forever. Well, so is Russia, by the way, and Russia certainly knows. This is all going through the motions. This jaw means nothing. Everything. There's only two places that really matter. We'll doubtless continue talking about this nonsense because it's what drives the news and the headlines. And let's see what shocking thing Trump says today. I'm so sick of talking about the guy already. And we got another almost 4 more years at least to deal with him. Yeah. But there's only two things that matter. One is what is happening on the battlefield. And two, even more importantly, because this is a war of tradition, of attrition, and a traditional war of attrition, if you want, or untraditional in some ways, and logistics. Everything is production and logistics. Right. And so the real battle going on is the battle of military-industrial complexes, which is the battle of Russia and a handful of allies now participating to some degree, North Korea to a considerable degree, Iran to a lesser degree, against the entirety of NATO, right? And all of NATO's major non-NATO allies, Japan, South Korea, and all of the other countries it can rope-a-dope into sending gear, whether that is Pakistan sending artillery shells, Israel, or vacuuming up the Russian-provided military equipment from the overthrown government in Syria from the new Al-Qaeda warlords in charge of the place. That's what has actually kept Biden arranged that, and that is what kept the Kiev regime in stock in equipment for over the winter, right? Up till now, that was a big part. Once again, this conflict. I mean, when you consider the amount of arms that were provided to the Kiev regime in Ukraine of Soviet legacy equipment from across the former Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union that was provided, and now once again we have this military equipment provided by the new Al-Qaeda, overlords of Syria. Mm-hmm. A lot of this conflict, Russia has been spent fighting its own military equipment, whether that's Russian or Soviet legacy that the West, has been throwing at Russia, which, will probably raise some foreign policy questioning about Russia's military export strategy at the end of this.
Yeah,
but that's where it's battle of the military-industrial complexes, and Russia is winning it handily. Not according to me, right? A Russian analyst, a Russian propagandist, if you will, but according to the Secretary General of NATO, Tutti Frutti, Mark Rutte himself, who continually harps that Russia is outproducing all of NATO put together by 4 to 5 times of the type of munitions and armaments needed for this type of artillery-heavy, land-centric conflict. And if you didn't need to push that home, or if you were relying on the Western mainstream media and the Kiev regime's claims, that's okay, we don't have anything else, but we've got drones, and drones is the future, and we'll win this war in drones. Both the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post reported in the last week that Russia, actually, it turns out that Russia is ahead of the Kiev regime in drones, both in again, not just the Kiev regime, but all of what NATO supplies the Kiev regime in drones, both in quantity and in quality and effective use on the battlefield. In particular, the Washington Post was pointing out Russia's now very large, extensive use and very effective use of fiber optic drones. These drones that are guided by seemingly impossibly, right? It's always hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah,
about a tiny fiber optic wire that can have lengths of 20 kilometers of more. I've seen the pictures of the battlefields with, when the light hits it right, you can see webs of fiber optic cables overhead like a web from so many fiber optic drones just covering the sky or on the ground covering fields. I've also seen a Kiev regime, a Ukrainian military vehicle, with its tire completely entangled in hundreds, if not thousands, of fiber optic cables that it had run over. These things are incredibly effective. They're used, because they're first and foremost because they are absolutely immune to electronic warfare jamming, which is another area which, by the way, Russia has an edge, but a big edge over anything that NATO can provide as well. But these are 100% immune to that, and they provide a stronger, more reliable signal. Even without the electronic warfare jamming. That's why you get so many just absolutely Hollywood quality shots of FPV drones now flying directly into APCs and the like because of the strength of the signal with that fiber optic cable. The video is almost an afterthought, but it's something that is there as well. So yes, as the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post admitted, yes, Russia is winning the drone war too. Putin's brutal drone war, as they termed it in the Western media. Drones are brutal when they're, of course, used by Russia, and heroic, life-saving drones. when it's drones we've provided the Kiev, right?
Heroic drones.